Well, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. We know you got a bunch of activations going out here this week for 9DCC during VCon weekend, which is lit. We're excited to come out, but yeah, thanks for coming to the podcast. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit as far as just sure. Who you are.
I'm GMoney. I'm pretty well known for my CryptoPunk ape. I wouldn't say I was one of the first people to NFTs, but I think I understood it in a way that most people didn't at the time, and was a big evangelist for the space, and pushing the narrative of like NFTs and what that means for the future of IP and tech and ownership. And I ended up doing a collaboration with Adidas, along with Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks comic that was the end of 2021. Which I just recently found out that was the biggest hype drop of all time.
Oh, damn.
I had no idea. Like, I was talking to somebody from the Adidas team, and I'm like, wow, that's a cool stat. Like, I'll take it. And about 6-7 months later, I launched 9DCC, and I've been really focused on that for the last 2 years. But overall, big into the crypto space. Have a background in TradFi. Sadly missed meme coins this cycle, so maybe you guys can share the meme coin alpha with me.
We got you.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's kind of like a quick TLDR on my story.
There we go. Well, so here's my first question for you. Yeah. I mean, I feel like so you spent 140 ETH, right?
Yeah.
And so I got to hear first, like, give us like your journey of how you got into crypto to begin with, and then walk us through, because I feel like when people see an NFT purchase for 140 ETH,
and it was like the highest in USD, right? Like some record or something like that?
Yeah. So I walk us through, like, one, how did you get to even that position to begin with? How did you get into crypto? How did you get into NFTs and everything like that? And then walk us through the decision-making process on dropping that kind of cash on something like that. Because I think a lot of people, they see the flash of it, but they don't necessarily always understand the decision-making behind it. So walk us through all that.
Okay, cool. So as I said, I had have a background in TradFi. I got involved into crypto. I first heard about Bitcoin probably in like 2012. Bitcoin was $27 the first time I saw it. And I spent like 3-4 hours trying to figure out how to buy it. I couldn't figure it out. The thing went straight to 1,000 like really quickly. And then like it popped. I'm like, this is a bubble. Like, this is done. And then I had moved to Puerto Rico in 2017, and I met some people that were trading, making money in Bitcoin. I was like, all right, let me take a look at it. And the price was back above 1,000. And as a trader, I was always like, all right, well, this to me is interesting, right? A bubble is a bubble, but when like the price gets back up there and it's sustained, that's interesting. There's a reason why it's back up here. So I start going down the rabbit hole. I find Ethereum. I participate in like the ICO boom in 2017. In 2018, I remember I was at a conference and somebody was pitching me investing in horse racing stables, and like people were like throwing money at them, and they were gonna like tokenize like horse racing, and I was like
actual horse racing or digital?
Like no, horse racing, like
okay,
actually like
real life
you
stables.
buy like a percentage of like a horse stable, and the guy was like literally like in this small group, people were just like throwing cash at him. I'm like, I'm out. Like, this is way too frothy, right? And so like I sold everything I had that was liquid. I went back to trading equities. Like I was always trading. And then, COVID hits, right? I'm trading still. Things are going crazy. And I remember the day that Jerome Powell said that he was basically printing cash, I wired a bunch of money over to Coinbase. I bought a bunch of Ethereum, and I started going down the rabbit hole again, right? So I caught DeFi summer a little bit, right? The first time, like I remember, like you have to remember in 2017, 2018, like people were just raising on white papers that didn't exist. Like it was just like, we're going to build this, right? And most of the time they didn't. And like I remember, so one of the ICOs I invested in was Haven, right? Haven, I remember I bought it at like 40 cents or something. It went to 50 cents and then it went down to like probably sub 10 cents. And then like I was looking at my wallets a couple of years later, they had rebranded to Synthetics, right? And Synthetics kind of started the whole DeFi boom of like staking and all that stuff, right? And yield farming. And so I was like, holy shit, like this thing's, I thought this was a zero, right? Like another story from that time is I remember I was on a call, we were on a call with Sergey from, what's it called? Chainlink, right? And the guy is like Russian, there was no website, and he like offered us like a healthy chunk. And like I was on with my boy and we're like, there's no way this guy's legit. Like, he's got to be a scammer, right? Like, there's no way I'm sending a Russian dude that doesn't even have a website that people are like throwing money. And like, you have to remember, like, this was like, people were just sending money to wallet addresses. Like, I had sent hundreds of thousands of dollars to people that is like, oh, I'll get you in this deal, you'll get me in that deal, right? And like, for the most part, like, people are generally pretty trustworthy, right? Which is wild, right?
Yeah,
and like,
and the funniest thing that it's like history repeats itself, because you literally had that this year with meme coins, where people are like posting addresses and just being like, send money to this wallet, we'll send you meme coin.
Right.
It's like, it'll be worth something. Right? Yeah.
And so, so that was like 2018, right? I take a break, come back in 2020, and I'm like, holy shit, this is really cool. Like, the first time I saw Aave, I was like, this shit's going to change the world, right? Like, being able to take out a collateralized loan without any KYC in like 2 minutes or less, like, that's wild, right? Like, that just changes the whole dynamic. So I was like, this is really fucking cool. I was playing like around in DeFi. I didn't have much of an edge because I can't code, right? And I wasn't really well connected in the space, especially at that time. So like, I'm learning, I'm playing all the food coins. I don't know if you guys were fucking around with DeFi in 2020, but like, it was very similar to meme coins, right? People were like launching yams and you know, yams too, and like all these crazy synthetic stable coins and whatnot, right? And so then in September, once DeFi summer cools off, I had heard about NFTs, but there was just like no time to do anything. And then like, I start going down the rabbit hole, and I'm like, oh shit, this is actually really fucking cool. And it made sense to me pretty quickly, because I started playing Fortnite at the beginning of quarantine, right? And I'm playing with my friends and their nephews. These kids are like 10, 11, 12 years old, like sick at Fortnite, like literally like saving me from dying like every 5 seconds.
Bro, and they play build mode and all that.
Yeah, like the kid, like they like do the thing. I'm like, bro, like, I just want to shoot up in the air, right? Like, and I realize how much money these kids are spending on skins, right? Like literally, and they're changing, like, you know, the game lasts, let's say 15 minutes. Every game they change their skin. You know, they're spending like all their, and granted, also this is during COVID, right? So they really don't have that much other things to spend money on. And I was just like, holy shit, like this is crazy. And I remember this is even before like I found NFTs. I was like, I don't know how like I can take advantage of this. Like I didn't know any publicly traded stocks as before the metaverse was really a thing. So I'm just like, there's something here. I don't know how I can harness it at this point in time, but I need to keep an eye out for it, right? So then fast forward a couple months, I find NFTs, and I'm like, oh, dude, like this is your skin on Twitter, on Discord, on Telegram, and it's verifiably scarce. Like this shit's going to be big, right? Just understanding like that concept. And, you know, like I'm a pretty sociable guy. So like I'll go out and like I understand just like dynamics, right? Of like why, you know, somebody wears a nice watch. It isn't necessarily because it tells the time better, right?
Yeah.
It's because it says something about
your
who you
status,
are. Right?
It's digital identity, branding. Like,
so
you could kind of, like to your point, it's like, especially with fashion and how people represent themselves, you can sometimes tell of just like how people align themselves by like what they wear.
Right. Exactly. Right. And so, you know, my thesis was very similar to that, how we operate in the real world. That would be how we operate digitally. Right. And so this is like September, October. I started messing around with a couple different NFT projects. And this is, I think the CryptoPunk floor was around $1,500 at the time. And I remember being like, $1,500, like that's insane. Like I want to find the next CryptoPunks, right? And so like I literally, so I started going and I'd be like, all right, like I'd be talking to people that knew more about NFTs than I did. And I'd go in and I like sweep the floor. Like, so the way I approached the space was like, okay, I have $100,000 to spend. I'm going to put $5,000 into 20 projects. Most of them are going to go to zero. A couple of them are going to, you know, maybe 100x, right? Or more. Because like, I was also looking at it as like, we're printing cash. I'm bullish on Ethereum. What is the best risk adjusted bet that I can make that if I'm wrong, okay, like I'll lose all my money. Why? Whatever. But if I'm right, I'm going to make 100x, 1,000x ROI. And I'll be really fucking happy, right? And that to me, that those risk rewards, like as a trader, like I always look for those things of like in like where the market is mispricing that risk, and I can take advantage of it. And I was able to take advantage of it for size. So like I'm going around, and this is also like I said, this is like today somebody spends $100,000 on an NFT that like nobody really bats an eye. like then like I'd go and I'd like sweep the floor for $5,000 and I'd be like, all right, like what else do you guys like? And people be like, whoa, like
Relax.
don't blow all your money and like spread it out. And I'm like, yeah, like trust me, like I know what I'm doing. And I ended up finding out about Chromie Squiggles when they were minting 2 or 3 weeks like after. And like it was like it took like Chromie Squiggles took like 2.5 months to mint out. So I remember one day I was like, I found their Twitter. I was like, I tried to go into their Discord. There was no Discord link on their Twitter because I wanted to batch mint because I wanted to buy like 500 of them, right? Because they were like $50-ish bucks each.
Word.
So I sat there for literally like 45 minutes or an hour, and I'm just like pressing mint because I didn't know how to do a batch function. And probably like after I took a break, after just sitting there for 45 minutes, I minted like the majority of like maybe like a range of like 300 to 400 like consecutive mints, and people were running out to dinner. They were like at dinner and they were running home because they wanted numbers, right? Because like when I started minting, Chromie Squiggles were in like the 1700s, and I'm like, I don't know what's going to make any of things valuable. Maybe people want a year. So I'm like, I'm going to go all the way to like 2100, and maybe people are going to want the year their parents were born, the year they were born, the year their kids are going to be born. And so I was just like sitting there minting. But then like if you look at the mints, I'll go like, I would get like maybe 5 or 6 in a row. And then like maybe like for instance, like in the 80s, people wanted their year born. The 2000s, people wanted 2000, 2020, people wanted that. So then I would miss a bunch of those mints because everybody was like trying to mint those while I was minting. So I was done. I was done with like that batch of minting. And I go to like check like my other Discords, and somebody recognized my wallet and sent me a DM to the Chromie Squiggle link, the Squiggle, the Art Blocks Discord link. And so then I get in there, and Snowfro's like, what are you doing, man? Like, stop wasting your money on Squiggles. You need to buy, if you're going to spend this much money on NFTs, you need to buy a CryptoPunk, like buy a zombie or better, right? Or rarer. And so over the next couple days, between him, Nate Alex, Justin Trimble, like a couple guys, OGs in the Discord, they red pilled me on CryptoPunks of like, this is why you should buy it, even though it's so much more expensive than everything else. And, you know, I ended up buying a zombie. And then I was like trying to buy an ape. By that, I knew I was priced, like I was almost priced out of an ape, but I knew I was definitely priced out of an alien. Because like at
what did the zombie go for, real quick?
I bought the zombie for like $20,000.
Okay.
And so at that point, right, like the zombie was like 20-ish. The ape was like I bought mine at like 150-ish, but aliens were like 600-ish. That's what people were expecting. And I'm like I wanted to spend $100,000 and just like in CryptoPunks alone, I was gonna be spending 150, right? Plus all the other stuff that I had. So, you know, I bought the zombie. I was looking for the ape. And then I remember one night, like some guy like lowered the price, like 25 ETH, and then lowered the price the next day, 25 ETH. And so like I DM'd him, we came to an agreement. I ended up buying that ape apparently like right before Flamingo DAO. I'm a member of Flamingo DAO now, but they were talking about buying that ape before I was a member. And yeah, like that was, and then I wrote my thread, right? That was like kind of like the thing that I think people didn't, because I remember I bought it. I think Bitcoin, I can't remember if it was 20,000 or 30,000. And then like it reached like that price. I bought my ape, and then like literally we went down like 20% like in the next 2 days, and people are like top. Like if you look at all the responses, it'd be like signs of the top, and people are like dunking on me, and I'm just like, all right, man, like this is like a 5-year trade. Like I hope I didn't fuck this up. And then, you know, I was like a huge NFT advocate pushing for why I thought my worldview of them was different than what a lot of people thought at the time. And
yeah,
I had already been like talking to people that were crypto native, that were like super like DeFi native people that had crushed it. And I could like red pill them on NFTs in like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And I was like, all right, well, the only way I'll be able to scale this is on like a social media platform, because now I'm going to have to go from room to room trying to red pill people for the next 20 years. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's when like I just started pushing content on like how I felt I viewed the space. Right. And it turned out to be right. Right. And I thought it was going to be, I remember I bought that ape and I was like, oh, I'm going to sell this at Sotheby's for $5 million, you know, in 5 years, like the most expensive CryptoPunk ever sold at like Sotheby's or Christie's or whatever. And then, 5 months later, they were they sold at Christie's auction, right? And so it was just like the compression of time in crypto is like wild. Right? It's just like can't sleep.
Way
right?
shorter than you think.
Like that, it was like 90% shorter, right? Like, and I was like, oh yeah, like this would be a 5-year trade. I'm gonna sit here on my hands for a really long time, and like it played out way faster than I had ever imagined.
But you're still holding it.
I'm still holding it, yeah.
So, okay, so here's my question for you. Well, one, I want to know, what's your best trade ever? Of all of those, like, what did you make the most money on?
I would say, so definitely NFTs. I would say probably maybe squiggles.
Okay.
I haven't sold a squiggle yet.
Oh, wow.
So I think I have 270 something squiggles.
Holy shit. So what do you think your combined, because obviously NFT prices have gone down right now, but compared to what you spent versus what you believe if you were to sell them right now in the given market, what do you think you would make roughly? I know this is it's a tough estimate.
I mean, I try not to think about it because at the height it was so much more. Probably like, I don't know, at this point, I don't know, maybe like $3 or $4 million.
And you put collectively how much into it?
150-ish K.
I call that a great ROI.
Yeah, no, it's great, right? Yeah, it's great.
Well, I guess, to that point too, like with markets being down, like why are you still holding NFTs? And like, why haven't you liquidated anything along the way, taken profits, anything like that? Like, what is it about NFTs and specifically the ones you own and maybe just like overall market that just like has you still so bullish on like, no, I'm still like 10 toes down on like my 5-year window?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, at this point it's even longer, right? So there's a couple things. One is, so I took out $1 million loan against my CryptoPunk in February, right? Okay. And part of that was because I needed a bridge loan, right? And it's like I could either sell, I had the ETH. I could sell the ETH. ETH was trading at like $2,200. Or I'm like, well, I can post this asset as collateral and stay long the ETH because I don't want to sell it here because I want to hold ETH at that price, right? Subsequently, ETH traded to like almost 4K over the next 6 months, right? So that's part of it, is like I can now use it as a bank, right? And I think, personally, CryptoPunks, autoglyphs, and to a lesser extent, Chromie Squiggles are like, I know everybody throws around the word blue chip very loosely in the space, but those are blue chips in my opinion, right? Like I think everything else, like a blue chip is like, will this likely be around in 100 years, 50 years, right? Like you think about blue chips in the stock market, like it's like your Nikes, your McDonald's, right? Like names that are like, we're like sitting there like, yeah, man, like my parents remember that, right?
Literally.
So that's like my thesis on them particularly, is like, I think they're the grade A of the grade A of NFTs. And because of that, I just think that over the next 50 years, and it's been validated by like traditional art collectors that I've met, where it's funny. There's this one guy, he's a billionaire. He's like a huge collector. And he said this to me really early on, and it's always stuck with me, is like the game in like trad art is to find something that tomorrow's billionaire wants to buy, right? So you buy something today so you can literally dump it on like tomorrow's billionaire, right? And so he's like, I have young kids and I take a look at like where they spend their time. And the question is, will they want this Van Gogh that they can hang in their wall, or whatever, let's say some contemporary artist for, let's say, $20,000, or that only they can see in their wall, or they want something that they can display digitally, right? And he's like, I think the move's going to be digital, right? And so I'm just sitting there and I'm like, all right, cool. That makes sense to me, right? Like in a world where we're going to, like we spent more time in front of a screen than our parents and our grandparents. Yeah. So we also have to assume that our kids will be spending more times in front of screens than us. So those future billionaires of tomorrow are going to be looking at, this historic period of NFTs that happened in the 2017 to 2021, 2022. And a lot of them will be historic, right? Like, and that's why, like, especially in that time period when I bought most of those NFTs, was late 2020. I was like, I don't know which one of these is going to be the NFT project, but there's a high probability one of them will be historic. They will be in museums. And even if like NFTs are a fad and they never come back, this will be significant.
Stand the test of time.
It's like this will represent an area, a period of time when these things were like special and crazy, right? And for that, it will be documented.
Yeah.
And that was like my thesis. And like my whole thought process now is like over time, right? Like I think in crypto, we're just used to like number go up so fast.
Yeah.
But like, you know, you hold this thing for 20, 30 years in a more digitally connected world, like when we're printing more money, right? When like we have all these factors that are in our favor, it's like,
and you're talking about like next generations and stuff. Like honestly, you mentioning that it kind of reminded me of when Banks when he bought his zombie like a couple months ago or something like that. It's like okay, he's been successful, he's made money over the past X amount of years, and it's just like, what did he want to spend his money on? It's just like he's probably spent it on materialistic things as well. But you know, he's in this crypto space and he's like, all right, what do I want status wise? Like, let me get a zombie. Right. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, it was a whole thing of like going out and trying to find like who has the zombie, brokering a deal and like that sort of thing. And yeah, it just reminded me of that, of just like, yeah, that kind of piece that like, that's where the direction of this is going, where it's just like digital art and digital pieces that people are going to want to have, years from now.
Right. And like to that point, right, is like, could he have bought a Van Gogh, a Picasso for $1 million? I think he spent around $1 million-ish. I think it was a trade, right? But he could have gotten any of those pieces, right, from the classics, and even something like contemporary from, let's say, like a Damien Hirst or like whatever. But he chose this digital object, right? Like he chose a CryptoPunk, and it's like, you know, he's 30 years old, right? He's 30 years old. So like, imagine like, you know, Aiden Ross, who, you know, he's much younger, right? Is he much younger? Like these streamers that are coming up, or anybody, right? That's like, oh shit, like we even see this with what was it? I think one of the Call of Duty skins for one of one of the
for
guns.
a crazy amount of money.
Yeah, and it's like, why? Because there's like one of them, right, or two of them, and it signifies something, right? You had to win, you had to be the best in the world at that time to get that, right? And I think there's going to be a lot of value placed on that going forward, especially. Like, imagine if we all had like AR glasses right now and you could showcase like your, like very similar to like MySpace, right? Top 5 friends, like top 5
NFTs
digital
or
objects,
whatever.
Right? Like, it's like, hey, here's how you learn a little bit about me without me having to tell you, you know, hi, I'm GMoney. Like I live in PR, right? Like,
no, it kind of reminds me a little bit too of something Frank has said recently that kind of stuck with me was, you know, NFTs are going to have its day again, and like the markets will come back. But the thing that we need to get first is like people to have more like fuck you money. You know what I'm saying? Like people to have more of that type of wealth where it's like they want to rotate into something where it's like, same reason why people like buy watches. When are they like buying Rolexes and APs and all this stuff? It's when they have a little bit more fuck you money and they've made some more wealth and they're like, okay, like I actually feel comfortable about spending this because I still have a bunch of money, but it's like I feel comfortable about spending this, and now I want something that's like either again aligns with just like what I like, identity, or just like puts me in certain network statuses, like whatever the case is, to where now when you're showing off, it's like, I'm sure, you know, there's a bunch of people that it's like if they see a crypto punk, they're like, oh, okay, we think of you like this, versus just like if it was a different PFP or whatever the case is, right?
And to that point, right, it's like you see it all the time in normal markets, right? The wealth effect, right? When the stock market's at all-time highs, luxury real estate, luxury cars, watches, cigars, wine, all these things,
booming.
Exactly what you said, right? It's like, oh, I'm doing great, even if it's on paper. I'm doing great. I can afford the $1,000 bottle.
Yeah, let's go ball out. Fuck exactly, ball.
Right? And so, you know, to that point, it's like I just think that there's something really powerful there. And my thesis has always been, right, like in crypto, right, like if you make $100 million in crypto, right, in Ethereum or Solana or whatever, like you're gonna buy like the asset so that you can like dunk on to show that you're part of that, right, to part of that community. And like I'll equate my first Patek that I bought, like I bought it a couple of years ago, and just it's funny just the way some people will just change how they treat you just because of like the watch you're wearing, right? And I was like, fuck man, like I wish I knew this. I would have splurged like way earlier if I knew that like maybe like, and not that I say it's good or bad. It's just like how some people are. And it's like,
just
listen,
like the way of the world a little bit.
If that opens the door for me that much more for an opportunity, I was like, fuck, man, I should have splurged on something like this way earlier, because that would have gotten me in a room that, you know, gets me a deal to further like what I wanted to do. Right. And I think it's the same thing with digital assets, right? It's just more scalable. Right. And the analogy I used when I bought the CryptoPunk, right, is like, at the time, it was like about the same price as like a Ferrari, right, or a Lamborghini. I'm like, all right, if I drive my Lamborghini, the only people that see it are like my neighbors and the people that see me in that car that day. But if I buy a CryptoPunk for $150,000 and you can verify it on chain, like anybody that looks at my profile, right, like the scale of the internet, right, is just like, yeah, like,
oh, he's got a punk.
Yeah, like I'd much rather flex with that than like a Lambo, right? Like so. That was just
real.
like, and I think just more people are going to think like that going forward, right?
Here's my question for you on that. So, okay, so you've been through obviously multiple crypto cycles, and so you've seen, you know, DeFi summer, you've seen the ICO craze, you've seen all the different, you know, certain segments that we've had in various different cycles. Right now, we've seen in the last year or so, Solana gain a very strong footing in the crypto space, and you're seeing far more people who have never touched Solana back in 2021 or 2022 who are coming into Solana and are either buying meme coins or they're just buying Solana and staking it and the whole nine and whatnot. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think Solana is the winner this cycle, or like, because I know you're an ETH maxi, so give us a little bit more background on that.
I wouldn't say I'm an ETH maxi, okay, right? Like I want all chains to win, right? Like we are all going there. Listen, I agree. Like when I look at like risk, right? It's like, okay, why did I like ETH and why did I like NFTs last cycle, right? If I think Bitcoin's going up, ETH is beta on Bitcoin, right? Solana, like this cycle, Solana's beta on Bitcoin and ETH, right? Just because lower market cap, right? Like it just has more, like it takes less incremental dollars to make it move, right? And that's why I liked NFTs so much last cycle, because I was like, these things are just so mispriced that if ETH goes up significantly, again, that wealth effect, people will be spending money there, right?
Yeah.
I've been like, on Solana, like I'm like, great, like the metrics are there. People are trading meme coins on there. I've traded on Solana. To me, it's kind of like the same experience that I've experienced on ETH in terms of, especially with like low market cap meme coins, where it's like, yeah, like I have like 10 failed transactions before I can buy the top in this, right? And like maybe that's because I'm not sitting there in the trenches trading every day, because I'm out there, you know, it's tough because like as much as like I see the time, I'm like, oh shit, man, like I should buy that. It's like I also know that if I buy it and I'm not paying attention, I'm going to miss the sale, right? So it's like I might as well, like, as somebody that traded full time, I know that it is a full-time job, because there's always somebody out there that's smarter than you, that has more money than you, that works harder than you, that has better information than you, that if you think you can outperform anybody doing this as a part-time job, like you're destined to fail, right? Because I was a full-time trader. Like I would work, 12 plus hours a day, like 18 hours a day, sometimes, especially during earnings season, just to find like 4 or 5 trades where I can like extract money out of the market and put it in my pocket, right? And so I think it's awesome, right? Like higher network activity, great. I did have like a pretty decent soul bag. I like rotated that into like other stuff as well. But like, I just don't actively talk about meme coins on the timeline, just because I know that like I can just move something just by tweeting about it. And like, ultimately, like I personally think meme coins are so PvP that it makes it like really difficult, for like a long-term thesis to form around it. Like I think it's gonna be really hard to get like BlackRock to come in and be like, we're doing a meme coin ETF, right? Like I think there's so many more things that need to happen before that's even like a question, right? I hope they both succeed, because I think, if ETH goes up, Solana will go up more, just because it is a lower market cap, right? I think at the end of the day, as long as there's more on-chain activity, to me, that's net positive for the space. Like I always laugh at like just the arguments of the ETH maxis, the Sol maxis, the BTC maxis. And I'm always like open to changing my position, right? To be like, hey, if I think the data has changed and I think the fundamentals are different, maybe I do rotate more of my portfolio out of ETH and into Sol, or, into BTC even, right? Because I think at some point too, you have to think about, well, the cream rises to the top, right? And so like we have the big 3 and those 3 that I just mentioned. And then you have like a bunch of other tokens that again will be more beta, but that thesis seems to not be playing out so much this cycle, right? Where altcoins are definitely down in terms of like the three majors for the most part. And I think that's why there's so much pain on the timeline where, you look at the chart up until before this past weekend, and I'm looking at those charts, I'm like, dude, we look like we're about to fucking break the fuck out, right? Like we're about to we should be sitting here counting like how much money we're about to have in like the next 6 to 12 months. And yet everybody's fighting on the timeline. And I think part of that is because people are like, all right, well, when the last time Bitcoin was at $70,000, my net worth was X, right? And now like I was long all this beta in these altcoins and they're down 70% in terms of ETH. So now instead of it being X, I'm like 25% of X. And now I'm like sitting there like, what the fuck, right? And those are things that you always have to be cognizant of. So it's like, I want all chains to survive. I mean, I read all the things, right? It's like Solana has more transaction volume and all this. And then I also read the other side of like, a lot of it's made up and a lot of bot. And like, I don't know. Like, I just know also that on-chain stuff in general, there's a shit ton of fucking botting, right? Like Blast, right? Great fucking metrics. And you look at any of these airdrops, right? Where people are farming the airdrop, the metrics go from insane to like down 95% as soon as the airdrop happens. So it's like, we have to figure out some sort of way to like get that organic growth, but then like prioritize people being real, even that means those numbers are smaller.
Yeah.
Right. But like ultimately, like I want all blockchains to win because I come from like the traditional finance world where, I mean, it's like, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know, right? If you're in those circles, you get these privileges. And I think blockchains open that up.
So here's what I want to know from you as a trader, because I feel like a lot of people need this advice from you. So I feel like there's a lot of people that over the course of the last year have taken some gigantic L's. And we see it all the time on the timeline where even at times when the market is doing well, you still have some people who are incredibly angry. And I think a lot of that stems back from not making some of the greatest decisions during 2023 and then therefore not being in the best position in 2024, right? And getting into 2025. So for those people, my mindset on it is always like, hey, take your L's, but focus on the next move, because if you're still so mad about your previous move, you're going to miss your next one, right? So for you, can you either tell us like some story about some big old L that you took and kind of what you learned from that? Because I feel like there's so many people that are so mad about that L that they're just so clouded and so therefore they like just can't even get into the next headspace of making the next decision.
So I think what you just described is probably one of the hardest parts of trading, right? Being able to, one, learn from a mistake, and then two, forget about it, right? Because you have to forget about it to move forward. And you can't sit there and be like, oh, what if this happens again? What if this happens again? It might happen again, right? You don't know, but that's why like risk management is so important. I'll take probably one of like my worst losses in equities trading as a good example is I'll take that one where, I was very like earnings driven, right? Twitter comes out. This is obviously before like Elon Musk is like maybe 7-8 years ago. They have a terrible number, right? Stock is down a couple percent, like pre-market. I'm in there at 4 a.m. I'm reading the analyst reports. I start shorting it. The best analyst in the space downgrades it, right? And he usually moves the stock. So I'm like shorting more, reading like all the other notes to find like what other trades are out there going on. At like 9:15, 15 minutes before the market opens, I go from like, I don't know, I was maybe up like $20,000-$30,000, which like in one position for me was like a good size at that time, to like down 75,000 in like a second. And I was like, what the fuck? David Faber, who's like the M&A specialist on CNBC, comes on, says that Twitter is in like active conversation, like Google, Apple, Disney, like Meta, like pretty much every company in the world wants to buy Twitter, right? So the stock goes from like down, I don't know, maybe like 15% to like up 20%, like in a second. And literally I was like that, and that was like probably, that was up there in terms of loss, but definitely the fastest I've ever lost money. Like it was literally like, I blinked. I was like, what the fuck just happened? And like, that was, That was on a Friday morning. I remember I closed out of the position 2 minutes before the market opened. I turned off my computer and I like went home for the weekend, and it was just like, I'm done. Like, cause I knew like I was on tilt. Like there's no way I would ever make that money. If anything, I would make it worse.
Chase loss.
And so it's just like, fuck it. Like just lock it in, right? Think about it with a clear head. What did I learn? What could I have done better? Like in that instance, like I don't like if I had to replay that trade again, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
Because like that was the right trade to make. It just so happened that there was this like 10 Sigma event that, you know, he comes on television and talks about, obviously none of it came to fruition, right?
Yeah.
Like none of those companies bought it, right? It was Elon that bought it. And so it was just like, yeah, like that was the right trade. And, you know, it's like similar than poker, right? Where poker, you have to make the right bet, right? It's like, if you have to fold pocket aces, right? Like not every pocket ace is the winner, right? And it's like the same type of mentality, but I think it's really, really hard to be able to learn and then forget, because you have to have like that memory of a goldfish of being like, yeah, that fucking sucked, but like,
got to keep putting up shots.
What do I learn from this so that it doesn't happen again? And then keep on playing, right? Because it's all about like, I was a fairly good trader. I was always profitable, and like I was only right on a good month. Like I would be right, like on an average month, I'd be right 55% of the time. A good month, I'd be right 60% of the time. Break even 30% of the time, right? So it's like you're only right like half the time, and you have to be okay with it. You have to be okay with being wrong and just like not being married to a position, right? Like there's many times I'd like buy something, I'm like, this isn't acting right. I get out. And then as soon as they sell, I'm like, oh shit, like it absorbed my sells pretty fast. Okay, buy right again. And like that's what is great about trading something that's liquid, right? Is like, you know, you buy a piece of real estate and you close on it, and you're like, fuck, I made a mistake. You know, it's going to cost you 20% at least to get out, right? Yeah. You know, at least with liquid stuff, like you can get out within like 1-2%. That's a win, like because you can use that information to your advantage.
We had Solana Chris on the podcast, and he had a bar, and I know Sonny and I both remembered it. He said, "Were you wrong or were you dumb?" And he's like, if you weren't dumb, then don't be mad about it. You're going to be wrong a lot of times. But if you were dumb, then that just meant you went into it with completely, illogical decisions and things like that. And like that you should be mad at. But if you were just wrong, it just happens, right? Yep. So in that trade, it's like you weren't dumb about it. You had solid logic to it, everything like that. You just happened to be wrong, unfortunately, because of crazy timing. Yeah.
For that, like I'll give you an example of when I was dumb this year, right? Like I bought a bunch of DGen at around a penny, right? Thing goes to like 6 cents in like, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. Me being greedy, right? I'm like, oh, this thing's going to 10 cents, right? I'm going to 10x this. I didn't take any sales. I sold it at like a small loss. And I'm like, man, that's the dumbest trade I've made in a really long time. Granted, I don't trade as much as I used to.
Yeah.
But like still, I'm just sitting there. I'm like, what? Like, why? Like I like 6x in like a month. Right? Like, why am I? And I'm sitting there. I'm like, man, like,
why am I not satisfied?
One, I'm not satisfied. But two, it's like, man, that money would be really nice right now if I had that sitting in cash. I'd be like, yeah, I'll buy all this shit at like a 30% discount to last week's prices, right?
Yeah.
But that's like one of those things. I'm like, all right, like it's in my head of like, learn from that mistake so that the next time it happens, I'm like, hey, man, I just made 6 times my money in 30 days. Like, take some off the table. At least take your initial risk off the table, right?
Well, I guess kind of transition because you mentioned that you're not trading as much these days. And I know that, you've been very avid in pushing fashion forward within the crypto space. Obviously, you talked about your Adidas collaboration that you did with Bored Apes. Obviously, you represent 9DCC and you guys make some amazing fashion. So I would love to just get into kind of what brought you from trading and getting involved into fashion. Have you always kind of had a love for it? Maybe we start with, you have a fire fit on right now. Like,
Thank you.
I've been looking at the shades too. Like what you got on as far as like the full fit?
All right. So, I got 90cc leather hat.
Okay.
Our shirt.
Okay.
Issey Miyake pants. Okay. And, Kubaram glasses.
Word.
It's I think they're based out of Germany. They're a German company. They make fire frames. Like I really,
Those frames are amazing. Yeah,
really cool.
I've been looking at them.
I have these in like 3 styles.
Oh yeah, once you find like one that fits, you're kind of just like, I'm trying to get multiple.
It's funny because I have the same product glasses that you do, and I almost wore them today. I'm like, I'll wear the Cooper on.
That would have been funny.
Yeah, we've been twinning on that,
but yeah, I guess like, have you always had this love for fashion and apparel? And I guess maybe talk a little bit about how even that like Adidas collaboration came about and how that maybe like, I think that's kind of what jump started you into 9DCC, if I'm correct.
Yep. So I think I always had like a passion for fashion. But I always had a passion for it. I think, obviously like when I was younger, right? Like I couldn't afford the things that I can afford now. So I would like, obviously I think that's part of like maturing. Interestingly enough, like even when I traded, I was a generalist. So I traded like anything that moved, like, and there was a narrative, like I understood it, but I really focused on consumer discretionary and certain parts of tech, right? Which is why I found crypto when I did. But I also understood like, retail, like I spent like on our desk, there was like 10 people in our group. Usually I was one of the people that would get like a good read on, same store sales numbers, retailers, big box and all that. So I understood that from a business perspective.
Yeah.
When I first got into the NFT space, my first thing, like I said, because I was playing Fortnite, the first thing I wanted to do was start a metaverse fashion company, right? Word. And I was like sitting there, I'm like, man, but like, who the fuck is going to buy like digital sneakers, right? Like literally, like, I mean, lo and behold, like Artifact performed a master class in it, right?
Yeah.
But I remember sitting there, I'm like, well, nobody's really hanging out in the metaverse yet. So like, do I really want to focus on this when like adoption could be like 10, 20 years out? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to collect in the space. And then like when the time is right, I will delve into this. Right. And so, luck would have it, right, is in March of 2021, I get a DM. This is why I was just on another podcast recently, and I was like, this is why I always keep my DMs open. Was in March of 2021, I get a cold DM from somebody that's like, hey, I'm a member of the Adidas Web3 team. Really love what you're doing. Are you down to hop on a call? Like, it doesn't even say he works at Adidas, like in his bio, right? And I don't know. Like, I'm like, what, it's 15 minutes of my time. What if he really does work at Adidas?
Yeah.
Because at that time too, is like, I had like a lot of people, like celebrities, like calling me, being like, hey, like teach me about NFTs and, this and that. And like, that's why like I can kind of understand what Ansem's going through to some respect, because that was me last cycle where like celebrities like, oh, or like explain NFTs to me. All right, cool. Like if I drop an NFT, like just like explaining this stuff to them. Right. And so it was not out of the world of possibilities that somebody from Adidas would reach out to me. So I'm like, all right, let's get on a call. It's supposed to be 20 minutes. We spoke for like an hour or two. It was like an incredible call. We continued talking probably like once a week. He's like, yo, we're working on this. Mind you, all this time, he hasn't emailed me from an Adidas domain. So he could still be lying to me, right? And so then, and then he finally emails me from an Adidas domain. I'm like, but I don't know if he's like part of this group. He could be like, like low man on the totem pole of just I'm just fucking around with this. Turns out it was true. Like I went to Adidas headquarters that summer, and I met like with his bosses, and like they were like, we're committed to this. We want to do this. And I started talking to them, even before Bored Ape Yacht Club and Punk's Comic even existed, right? Is when they were like thinking about this, and I was like, community and like, bring them in and like, let's all be partners on this. And it was amazing. Like that trailer, like, I mean, I don't know, like I have my logo, the GMoney logo on a pair of All-Stars, and like that's fucking sick.
That's
you know what I mean? Like I'm like,
and officially too. I remember when that came out, and I was like, yo, this is sick. They're partnering with Adidas. Like, it's just like you see sometimes when you just see certain things in the space, you're like, this is objectively really dope. Yeah. And that's what that was.
Yeah. And I was like, man, I'm like, this is fucking cool. We had the hoodie. Like I still wear that hoodie. It's really comfortable. And I wear that hoodie all the time. Right. It's like, and then like, I remember the trailer came out, and they had to pay to license Stevie Wonder's What a Wonderful World, like for the trailer. And it's like, and they paid a lot for it too. And it's like, their metrics, Adidas was so happy. They were getting more engagement from that video and that tweet than they did with like any Kanye tweet, any Beyonce tweet,
wow.
Like all that stuff. Like even like their Instagram posts, like the engagement level was insane. So they were like, so happy. This drop happens.
Power of CT.
Yeah, the power of CT. But then also, right, like it was like a $30 million drop 2 weeks before Christmas.
Yeah.
Unplanned in like, let's say like their calendar. Like they were like doing backflips. They were like, holy shit. Like, and mind you, Nike also bought Artifact like publicly like 5 days before that, right? Like it all happened within like the same week. And I'm sitting there and like, granted, this is the top, right? And I'm like, bro, like this is it, right? Like arguably like Nike and Adidas are two of like the most scalable, cool brands on the planet, right? Like you go anywhere in the world and they generally are like Nike and Adidas, pretty fucking cool, right? And I'm like, oh man, this is it. Like this is like this is what mass adoption looks like in onboarding, and obviously we should have sold all our coins right then. But yeah, so what ended up happening was after that is like they were focused on building out their metaverse and what eventually turned into alts. And I was like, all right, well, I kind of like, let me make something that I want to see for myself, right? And so at that time, it's like, all right, I did well in crypto. How can I show to the world that I have good style and like good taste, right? Because at the time, a lot of like the merch that was coming out was just very like cartoony and juvenile. And I'm like, it's cool, but like I wear this to the gym. I'm not going to wear this to like the club. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, I want something that's like,
it's like an actual fit.
Yeah. It's like, dude, like, I don't want to wear like Prada when I'm out and people are like, oh, like, what do you do? It's like, I want a brand that can like represent who I am and be like, oh shit, like, oh, that's the crypto brand. All right, cool. Like you're in crypto. All right. Like, let's chat about it. Right. And that was it. It was just like, I want to make something for me and hopefully other people like it. And it turns out like other people did like it. And I was like, all right, like we have something here. Let's really start leaning into it.
No, that's really dope. I think one of the first times I saw 9DCC was just a little bit prior to DNYC when we took over the hotel. But then I really, really remember seeing it. Obviously, like you guys were a part of the duffel bag that that was in everybody's hotel room, right? And I remember like, I'm super big into merch, right? Like super big into like I've done merch under DeGods. I've done merch for a couple other brands as well. And for me, like I'm always like kind of thinking about the like similar thing is like, how do I actually make some of this merch a fit? Like everything's not going to be one, but it's just like certain things. Like I want to make pieces that like I could wear out, that I can like, same thing, like either go to the club, go to an event, whatever the case is. And I can wear something that like, it actually just objectively looks like a good outfit. And so I remember opening up that bag and just going through everything and getting the 9DCC, black hat. And then you had the condom in there as well with your CryptoPunk on it.
Well, do you know the story behind that?
No, that's what I wanted to ask about. Is just like, how did that come about? And like, what was that? I mean, I guess what was that like collaboration like?
So, it's funny. So I lived in Manhattan for 14 years before I moved to PR. And this is like in the days before Uber Eats. So, back then you would have to call like a bodega or anything like to get like delivery. And so I remember there was one time, it was like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I needed condoms and I had to call the bodega and they're like, yeah, we're not going to deliver you like a box of condoms. they go, you have to order something from the kitchen. So I'm like, all right, I'll take a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich. So I ordered a bacon, egg, and cheese and
condoms. That's
so insane. They deliver that. And so I was like,
so you had a little post snack?
Yeah, exactly, right? A post snack. And so then I was like, when we were like going, and like, I'm a New Yorker, right? I was born like in the suburbs there. I love Manhattan. I spent so much time there. And it was like part of like, while you guys were doing DeGods, the D hotel, right? Taking over the hotel.
Yeah.
We were doing a scavenger hunt of our own, right? Like different spots that weren't necessarily like, you don't find them like on Yelp or TripAdvisor. It's like, yeah, dude, like this is my favorite pizza joint. This is like the good taco spot that like you won't find on Yelp per se, right? And so we started, the first stop was a bodega, like to tell that story, right? Of like you had to go up there and order, a pack of condoms and like a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich, right? And then you got a bag. You didn't know what color. We had 4 different colors with like different rarities that you could get. And then like that began the scavenger hunt. But that was like, I was like, dude, that was such a New York story of like my experience of living in New York. at the time as like a single guy in his 20s being like, what, I just totally fumbled the bag.
Yeah.
Came in unprepared. Like, thank God, like, the bodega at the corner bailed me out.
Yeah. So that was the idea behind putting the condoms in the bag itself.
Yeah.
How did that how did that just like collaboration come about in terms of like DeGods being like, did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you as far as like wanting to put your stuff in the bag?
So, like I would talk to Frank like here and there, right? He's not very responsive.
Yeah.
So like I would talk to Aaron a lot on the team.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think Kevin when he was there, but I was just like, when I found out that you guys were doing like the hotel takeover, I'm like, dude, like, and like I saw, I think they teased that they were doing like a gift bag for like people that stay. And I'm like, dude, like I like the thing I've always loved about DeGods is like, and I know there was like so much hate on like some of like the parties of being like brofest or whatever. I'm like, bro, like, that was me when I was 25, right? Like I like that energy, like me going out with my boys and like partying and getting drunk with my homies, like, and like coming home like empty handed, like no girls or whatever. Like I've been there, like I know what it's like, and it's like,
and it's still a good time, yeah,
great time, and those are still like my best friends, right?
Yeah.
Like when I go to New York and I go home and like they're married with a wife, kids, and like living suburban dad life, and like we'll still there and talk about it and be like, yo, dude, like, remember that time we were like screaming at the bar and we got kicked out? I fuck with that energy, right? So I was just like, that is a younger version of myself, and like I totally identify with that. And I think I mentioned it on the timeline. I think I think I remember Mika, like, I don't know if you guys remember the video I'm talking about. It was like maybe Eddie was dancing, but like it was just like a dancing video of like a mosh pit. I'm like, I get that energy. Like
I'm pretty sure that's the video of where we met, because we met at a DeGods party in New York, and there was the giant mosh pit, and I think that's the one where we have like the cowboy shoeies done and like all that kind of shit.
Yeah, I think it might have been that one. And I was just like, dude, like I'm sober now, right? But like I remember like that my 20s were like I drank a lot. Like I had a fun time. So I was just like, even before that, because I think Paris was before then, I was like, all right, like, let's get these hats in these people's hands, right? Because I'm like, that is...
I wore that hat so much, too. Like,
that makes me so happy. That makes me so happy to hear that.
I was just like, this shit is dope. And, like, I remember, like, because you guys did the feature where it's like you tap on the hat, you got the NFT with it, and it represents the hat and everything like that. I was like, this is just objectively, like, one, a cool hat, but two, like... It's just like a cool experience overall, for sure.
Yeah, and that was it, right? And that was it's like, how can we do things that hopefully I think is cool, right? And like I said, I identified so much that I'm like, I know that like the people like that I talk to that I want involved in 9DCC are me 15 years ago, right? Me younger, right? Because I was that guy. I was a finance bro, right? Like living in New York City, being single, like the same stories that I'm sure you guys have. Like of your weekends and your nights out, like I did that, right? Before social media was as big as it is now, but like it was just different, right? But like I fuck with that energy, right?
Yeah.
Where do you want to take the brand from here? Like perfect world, let's give a realistic, like 2 years from now, realistic timeline.
I mean, I hope like everybody on the planet's wearing it, right? Like I it's tough, right? Like I think the retail environment's really hard, but we're out there trying to do what we can, right? Like the cool thing is like Bradley Cooper was wearing our hat like a couple weeks ago, and he's worn it multiple times, which is fucking awesome, right? Like it's not, and he doesn't know anything about the crypto side. He's just like, I like the hat, right? I'm still waiting to hear a story of maybe like one day like somebody goes up to him, like, yo, let me scan your hat, and he's like, what the fuck are you talking about, right? Like, which I think would be cool. But like I think sky's the limit, right? In terms of like, I think we all have to rise together, right? We have to support each other, right? Because the space is so small. And so it's like, where can we collab, right? And like, I'm glad we're talking, because I feel like I've had multiple conversations or tried to have multiple conversations with Frank of like, dude, let's collab on some merch together.
Oh right? Yeah. Like, we're going to run that for sure. We're absolutely going to run that.
But like and listen, I know he's super busy as like a founder myself, like, your space and your attention really runs thin, right? Yeah. And so that to me is like something. It's like, how can we? And this is like something that I've been focused on since day one. Is one of the things that I think crypto has gotten wrong is we've confused gamification with financialization, right? And not everything in crypto needs to be financialized, right? Because we all wear brands every day. We do certain things for money, right? Like if you ask anybody, do you want to make more money? Of course they'll say yes.
Yeah.
It's like, will you do this to make more money? They might say no, right? And we do so much shit because it makes us feel good and we like it, right? We wear clothes. We're basically walking billboards for our favorite brands because we like it. We pay them for the privilege of wearing their product and being a billboard. And it's like, I don't think we need to financialize everything, but we can gamify it, right? Where it's like, hey, like you meet somebody in a 90cc product, collect an NFT, right? Like, I mean, the thing that I thought was pretty cool, like with this airdrop meta that happened at the beginning of the year, we got like people in our community, like people that had collected that hat for free.
Yeah.
Got like $400 or $500 airdrop from like certain different communities because they're like very similar to how they wanted to target like different communities. Like 90cc was one of them. And it was just kind of like, cool. You technically got an airdrop for wearing like a hat that you liked.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucking
Which
cool.
Which is sick.
Yeah. You know?
But it's like no expectation,
but it's,
right?
It's not like, hey, because if I was like, every time you wear this hat, I'm going to give you $5. The second that goes down, right? And I'm like, I'm going to give you $4 now. You're like, fuck you. I'm not wearing that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, and like, that's just the way it is. Right. And so it's like, if you can take that out of the equation, you're like, this is my fucking favorite hat. I wear it all the time. I'll wear it for free. And then you're like, oh shit. Like I just got like an extra $200 for just like wearing my favorite hat. Like that's pretty fucking cool. Right. Yeah. And like that to me is like something that's special about crypto when you talk about like, how do we all rise up? Right. And how do you help each other out and grow community? I think the biggest problem is like, and I know like, you know, DeGods has gone, every NFT project has gone through this, right? You make promises, you know, you want to be up only, but that's just not the way it goes, right? And the second you can like reset those expectations and be like, hey, look,
this is where we're at.
Yeah, this is just a community of people that have certain things in common that fuck with each other and want to help each other out. Like that's why like what Frank has been posting on the timeline about like, you know, creating that Telegram group and stuff. Like I do it at a smaller scale with like 90cc and Admit One, right? Is like I'm in our Telegram group all the time. Like anybody in the community wants to get in touch with me, I'm always there. I'll listen to them. Like I'll listen to their pitch if they want to pitch me something. And I'm respectful because it's like, you support me. So yeah, like how can I help you? You know? And it's like, that to me is like, when you talk about community, that's what makes it special. Not like number go up, right? Number go up is great. Like we're all here because we want number go up, but that can't be the only reason.
100%. Here's my question for you. So I feel like, and we talk about this all the time when it comes to anything like Web3 related merch wise, we always talk about, we want the merch to just be cool in general, not something where it's like, oh man, that's cool for Web3 merch. Yeah. We want it to just be cool in general. And then I feel like the best companies make stuff where you can actually advertise it and market it towards people in Web2, and they don't even have to know anything about the brand. They're just interested in it. So when you think about 90cc and how you're going to market that, or how you're already marketing that to people in Web2, what's your kind of strategy, I guess, for like how to market that product to somebody in Web2 who knows nothing about Web3 and things like that? How do you make it feel luxury to them? Is it just the quality of the products, and like, is it the form of marketing that you're doing? Like, what is your marketing strategy for them versus people in Web3?
So the first thing is you don't mention NFTs or Web3, right? Like that's number one. We call them, you know, digital experiences, digital collectibles. People are more open to those things. But to your point is make something cool that they want to wear. Like to me, like with our first collection, the thing that like makes me the happiest is that like Bradley Cooper, Chance the Rapper, was wearing one of our jackets on the season finale of The Voice, right? He has no idea that there's an NFC chip linked to an NFT, right? Like, and he doesn't care, right? And it's like, that's fine. But he's wearing the jacket, right? And it's like, he's wearing it because he liked it, right? And that to me is like, that's where you win, right? Because we keep seeing these things, like everybody talks about is like, find product market fit, right? Just make shit that people want. And then like you can use crypto economics and that to pour gasoline on the fire, but that can't be like the fire starter, right? Because if you don't ultimately make things that people want, then you're going to fail, right? But like that to me has been like our number one thing. So it's like when we get the feedback from people not in the space, it's like that don't care about the NFT aspect, the Web3 aspect of it. And they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like let me know when I can buy that, right? Because like we released the connection, we previewed the collection in February. Stuff is starting to come in. You know, we're going to have some more stuff here.
That's the collection where it was like more than just T-shirts. I think I thought it was like there was like a really dope button up. There was the jacket. I want to say there was pants too. Yeah,
we had some like Glen Plaid pants that like were tearaways. Like,
Really
cool.
When I saw that collection, I was like, yo, this is this is pretty insane. I'm not going to lie. Because before it was like you guys were doing, obviously, the teas, you had the QR codes and like that sort of stuff. And those things were obviously like, they were cool as well. But like, actually
it's just
coming
like
out with the
next,
fashion. Like a
it's
fashion
like
collection. I was like, oh, you guys like really just like, went next level with it.
And like, that's to that point, right? Is like, just meet people where they're at. And then, cause like, that's the whole thing, right? Is like, if you like the hat and then there's this digital experience that you can unlock, you can choose to go down that rabbit hole or not, right? And that was kind of how I felt with like NFTs in 2021 is like, if I could convince you why CryptoPunks are valuable, you can then be like, all right, well, maybe I don't fuck with CryptoPunks or I can't afford CryptoPunk, whatever. I'm going to go down that rabbit hole and find my NFT, my forever
what
NFT.
It is, yeah.
And I feel the same way with like what we're doing, right? Is like, there are people that are going to wear it that don't give a fuck about the digital experience. And that's fine. But there are people that are going to want it, and then like it unlocks some sort of surprise. And it's like, oh shit, like, who knows? Maybe like a couple of years from now, it's like, oh, this could be a wearable in Fortnite. It's like, oh yeah, you bought the first collection,
or it's a collector's item or whatever. Like I think we've seen it obviously like with a few other projects, right? Like Pudgy Penguins with their toys. Like there's certain people that it's just there for the toys. Like you're not there for the digital experience, and then other people are like going through the experience itself. We've seen it like Clanosaurus, their plushie. Obviously with DeGods, it's like our thing, I think, is more on the basketball big three angle. And it's like, hey, come to a game. And it's like, if it takes you down the rabbit hole of because you came to a game with a friend or whoever, and it takes you down the rabbit hole of getting into NFTs, great. If you just come and enjoy the game and now you're a fan of Killer Threes and you own a t-shirt and you like that, like perfectly fine as well. Like we want you as well. And so I think it's just
like, to your point, right? And I think Pudgy has done a master class of this, is like create a top of funnel as wide as possible. And then it's just like a conversion game, right? Like people go further down the funnel at like lower numbers. But the key is, how do you create that funnel as big as possible at the top so that people are like, like I'm still amazed. Like, when I see like the Pudgy account and like the Jiffies and all that stuff, it's like, bro, like that's sick.
Yeah,
like, that's sick. Like they're like
I've been sent some gifts before of Pudgies by like people that aren't even in crypto, and I'm just like, oh, word. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like really, cool. Really spreading the brand, and it's just like you're gonna have somebody that either buys a toy or uses a gift and goes all the way down the rabbit hole, buys an NFT, and you're gonna have the others that just stay top of funnel, but you need those people too.
Right. Yeah, but like to what we were talking about before, right? There's some kid that's like 4 or 5 years. Like I give the Pudgy plushies to like every one of my friends' kids under the age of 5.
Me too.
Gets all of them. I'm like, yo, like buy like 10 of these. I'm giving these out at Christmas, right?
Yeah.
That one of those kids, there's some kid that's like 5 years old today, 20 years from now is going to be able to afford like the Pudgy NFT and be like, I remember that shit from when I was a little kid, right?
100%.
I'm fucking with that. I'm buying it.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I think of it as like very similar to like Hello Kitty, right? From like my generation of like, there are people that go nuts for Hello Kitty because it reminds them of when they were a kid.
Yeah.
Right.
No, absolutely.
They came out with, this is just random fun fact. I heard this on a podcast the other day. Hello Kitty's not a cat. It's a little girl. They said,
I had no idea.
It fucked me up. I heard that they like Hello Kitty announced that, and I was like, wow, it's a cat to everybody. Like what? They randomly came out and said it. It blew my brain. I was like, one, I don't understand why you needed to clarify that, but also like, what? It's a cat, and they're like, no, it's a little girl. I was like, okay, strange. Randomly heard that in a podcast the other day. Blew my brain.
Wild.
But
that's funny.
Yeah. So in the current, my question for you too is like with the way the space has gone in the last like. Honestly, I'll say like 2023. 2023 was pretty bleak for the mass majority of it, right? During that time period, did you ever wonder like, is this like, did I fuck up? Like, is this Web3 thing not going to be as big as I thought it was going to be? Because there was part of the timeline where you went on Twitter and it was just angry. Everyone's yelling at everybody. Everybody's posting if you bought this at this, it's now worth this. You're down bad on this. At any point during that time period, did you go, fuck, are we going to come back?
I'd say, I mean, if I told you no, I'd be lying, right? Like for sure, right? Like I think anybody that can make like a rational decision, like you have to think about that, right? And especially as a trader, I'm like always like, I'll take both sides of the argument and like see which one makes the most sense to me, right? Even along with like the Solana ETH stuff, it's like I'm like, all right, I'm open minded to understand that's like, hey, maybe I was wrong, and if I was wrong, I have to be like, what do I do then, right? How do I pivot? What do I do next? So definitely like those thoughts have crossed my mind. I think ultimately at the end of the day, for me, permissionless worldwide systems and like creating a digital ownership layer are super important when you think about freedom of choice in humanity going forward, right? And I think love him or hate him for Elon, like what I think him buying Twitter has allowed an open conversation to happen from like both sides of the aisle, no matter what you believe, which is good, which is ultimately good for us, right? And I think the same thing with ownership, right? Is like, you know, if Bitcoin was owned by the US government, or like that's like the whole thing against CBDCs, right? Is like if they're issued by the government, that means they could take it away at any point too, right? Unless, you know, you follow the rules, right? And it's like having that ownership layer to me is really important. And maybe it doesn't manifest itself as PFPs and what we saw last cycle, and there's some new iteration. But I think at the end of the day, the really amazing thing about NFT technology and like the 721s, right, and the 1155s and all of them, is that it allows for that ownership layer, whereas before that, it really was right-click save, right? It's like, oh, I like this, right-click save, right? And it's like, you can still right-click save, but you don't technically like own it, right? And it's like, maybe that changes what that looks like in the future, but I think ultimately that concept of having that digital sovereignty is going to be super, super important in the future, right? And I think we're seeing it probably on some sort of scale today, right, with platforms, right, like the social media platforms. But like you also talk to like anybody that's lived in, you know, a nation that has had hyperinflation, and they tell you how important like having, you know, USDC or USDT or Bitcoin is.
I was literally just reading a thread by a woman the other day. She's
from Argentina, right?
From Argentina.
I read that too,
yeah. And she was talking about how important it's been for her to have USDC, how she's been able to go from like high school dropout to like working within crypto by just like learning, being a part of the space, and that it's like, you know, again, you go back to that kind of like a little bit more of an equal playing field when you're talking about crypto, and like something like that is such an amazing, I think, just story and journey, not to necessarily like obviously encourage anybody to be a dropout or like anything like that, but just the fact that it's just like, hey, like you don't always have to go the normal path to necessarily be successful in this life, and to create a way and create a lifestyle that like you can be proud of, and you can, you know, you take fruits from your labor and that sort of thing. But yeah, to your point of like the stables, and I think even just the proof of ownership, someone was I was talking to, I forgot who I was talking to, but like talking about the housing market, right? And it's like, I mean, like what is proof of house except a piece of paper, like just a deed? Like it's just like, bro, you're literally proof for an entire like land in your house and all that just lives on a piece of paper versus like, okay, if that piece of paper gets burned or like gets lost or whatever, then what proves that you own this house versus like if this is now on the blockchain and people can prove it, like that's real. That's more real than the piece of paper.
Dude, like to that point, right, is like I've bought and sold real estate, and like they're like, hold on to the contract, right? And I'm like why? Like
you're like, put
it's
this 2024,
man. Like not even on change. Is like can you digitize this? Like like
can I at least get it in my Apple Wallet or something? Like damn.
Yeah, and it's like that's why like I think California, the DMV in California announced something, right? Like with on chain. It's like that to me is a step forward as well, right? Because it's like, why do I owe, like, I think it's for insurance, right?
Yeah,
Something
for
like
registration.
Right,
And it's like, it makes so much sense because you think about it, you get pulled over by a cop and they're like, license and registration. If you don't have your registration on you for whatever reason, it's like, how dumb is it that we live in an age where a cop can't just scan your license plate and go, this car is properly registered to so-and-so. Okay, does that match our license? Okay, cool, we're good to go. Like what are we doing? It's the year 2024 and you got to have the registration?
Right.
Like,
dude, like, that's why, like, whenever I've gotten pulled over, I'm like, fuck, man. Like, I hope I have updated. Like, I like never have updated registration or insurance, or whatever. And they're like, you know, it's expired. I'm like, oh yeah, like, you know, I forgot to print out like the new one. Right?
Yeah,
it's like,
dude, it's so dumb. We live in an archaic world, and we just have to move forward with some of these things. And again, I think it's just changing the narrative on some of this stuff, in terms of blockchain and crypto. And, it's like the reality of it is there's a lot of people who have a bad taste in their mouth because when it comes to crypto and everything like that, because of some of the scams that are out there and all of that. With that said, every industry has its scams. Every industry has its bullshit and everything like that. We just have to have more and more people who continue to lead in the right way and show people how it should be properly done. Sonny, don't step on that. Right. And so, that's more or less like how we change that narrative. It's just going to take time. And I think right now we're, knock on wood, it feels like we're starting to see the waves of that starting to change. It's just a matter of like continually doing what we need to do to change that narrative. And then once we start seeing more and more adoption of it, like it's just going to go, off to the races.
I was at I was in Venice earlier today, right? I go into a market and I'm trying to buy something. I'm literally just like buying like chips and a water, like something like that. And like their little machine is having trouble like doing the Apple Pay, right? And so I'm just like, bro, like this is not working. Like, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? I probably tried like maybe 3-4 times trying to tap and it wasn't accepting it. And then he like moves to a different machine and he's like setting it up. But this lady behind me is just like, when I see you tapping like that, like it looks like a scam. Like it looks like you're scamming. And I'm like, what? I'm literally just using Apple Pay. Like this is the same as using a debit card. She like pulls out her $5 bill. She's like, what happened to just having cash? And she's like showing it at me. And I'm like, what is happening right now? I was just like, wait till you find out that I'm in cryptocurrency. You're going to really like lose your shit. I'm just trying to Apple Pay real quick. And it was just such a funny experience because she was just like literally thinking that like just tapping your phone. She was like, are you scamming right now? Like whatever. And I was like, you know why I don't have the dollar? Your dollar's getting inflated right now. How about that? Like,
No, exactly. And to your point, right? Like to both of your guys' points, like we have a lot of work to do, right? But I think one of my favorite stories is I remember in like 2021, I held a conference in PR and there were a lot of like local artists that went there to like learn about NFTs and whatnot. And so there was this one guy that collected a POAP from me, ended up joining my community, had no idea about crypto. He was just in there. He's like, I heard I can make more money like selling my art as NFTs. Literally like 6 months ago, he was shilling a meme coin on like an L3 or something, right? Like, and I'm like, dude, like how like far down the rabbit hole you went. And like, to me, that's great because like he is now much more financially literate today than he was 3 years ago, right? It's like, and at some point putting all that hard work in, it will pay off for him. And I'm sure he'll get like a bag at some point, right? If he hasn't already, but like that to me is like, it's now empowering him, right? Where it's like, if he can make a bag, then he can make the art that he wants to make going forward as an artist and not necessarily have to be like, hey, I have to take this job that I really don't want to take because I have to pay my bills, right?
Yeah.
And so that to me, when I see stuff like that, I'm like, man, like we're onto something right here, right? Because even if for nothing else, he went from like not understanding that the dollar is getting inflated and we're losing our purchasing power by the second to being like, oh yeah, fuck that. Like I'm holding all my shit in like Bitcoin, right? Like it's like, yeah, like you store your wealth there, right? Yep. And that's kind of like the gospel that we're all spreading, right? With crypto in general.
100%. 100%. Well, hey, I know we'll wrap up here in a minute, but Sonny's got a gift for you. We've been talking a lot about fashion.
Okay,
he's got a little something for you.
I think this is something that you're gonna truly, I hope appreciate.
Ooh, okay,
but yeah, no.
Let's see, live unboxing on the podcast.
Yeah, the zippers are right here on the side over there.
Here we go.
I'm excited for you to open this up and get your take on it, seeing it in person.
Here we go.
I'm pretty sure you are familiar with Jeff Hamilton.
Yes, I am.
Here we go.
Oh, wow.
Here we go. This is the DeGods Jeff Hamilton jacket.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that. This is sick. Dude, I've seen this. I think probably I've seen you. I think I've seen you wearing it on the timeline. I've seen a couple guys. This is sick. This is a sick jacket.
We've started spreading it this year, but, as someone that, I know you're a collector, you're in fashion, you're a holder. We've done stuff in the past, like definitely had to get this over to you. I know you'd be someone that truly, truly appreciates something like this.
Dude, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I got some gifts for you guys when you guys come to the store this week. So
there we go.
Oh yeah, we'll be there tomorrow for sure.
100%. Well, hey, dude, we appreciate you coming on, man. This is hearing some of these stories and stuff like that, because, you know, we've been in the space for a long time now, and just, you know, we've all seen everything that you've been doing for a really long time. So hearing these stories is very cool. So we appreciate you taking the time to come out here and do this.
Dude, no, thank you.
Yeah, and pumped to come check out the pop-up.
Dude, yeah, and you guys keep crushing it, man. You guys have been crushing it with content, and I always see you guys on the pod and interviewing, having great interviews and stuff. So when you hit me up, I was like, yeah, absolutely, right. I don't come to LA often. I'll admit, like, I'm a New Yorker. Like I come to LA, I'm like, when can I get out of here? But this is enjoyable.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad we were able to just align it up and get right. And to Marc's point, I think it's you know, it's always fun getting really, really dope people that are in this space on the pod, and you get to deep dive a little bit more and learn more about just like where you came from, like what you've been doing, and some of the cool stories that you've been through aside from whatever we see on the timeline, right? So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, last question for you. Best pizza in New York?
Ooh.
For regular slice, like it's you're gonna be like, it's so cliche. I love Ray's, right? I love Prince Street Pizza for the pepperoni. And have you had Mama's too? It's the original location's on the Upper West Side, but they just opened up a spot in the West Village. Really funny. Next time you're in New York, go there.
Okay. All right. 100%. Well, we'll have to come out there. We'll go there with you. How about that?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
There it is. Well, hey, man, appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Cool.
See you guys.